Being a Canucks fan this week has been a bit of an emotional roller coaster, hasn't it? You look at what just happened with this team over the last few days, and you can feel it. Something big is shifting inside this organization. The direction of the team, the way the roster is being built, the moves management is willing to make. It's starting to feel like the front office finally decided to hit reset in a serious way. And honestly, depending on how you look at it, that can either give you hope for the future or make you a little nervous about what the next couple seasons are going to look like. Because in just a few days, a bunch of moves went down that completely changed parts of this roster. Veterans are gone, draft picks are piling up, and there are some new names coming into the system that could quietly become part of the next version of this team. And here's the thing. Today, we actually have two big Canucks stories to talk about. One of them is about how the team handled the entire trade deadline, and whether management actually did a good job or not. And the other one is about a specific move that might not look huge at first, but could end up being pretty interesting for the blue line moving forward. So, yeah, there's a lot to unpack here today. But before we dive into all of it real quick, if you're a real Canucks fan who lives and breathes this team like I do, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. This channel is brand new. We're trying to reach our first 600 subscribers, and the goal here is simple: a place where Canucks fans can talk hockey every single day. So let's start with the big picture here. Over the span of just 3 days, the Canucks made 5 trades and even grabbed a player off waivers. That's a lot of activity for a team that clearly decided it was time to step back, collect assets, and start reshaping the roster for the future. In total, Vancouver moved out 4 NHL players and 1 minor league player. In return, they picked up 6 draft picks and a young defenseman who might still have some upside. Because of these moves, the Canucks now hold 2 first-round picks in this year's draft, 2 second-round picks this year as well, and multiple second-round picks in each of the next 2 summers. So from a rebuilding perspective, that part is actually pretty solid. But the deadline wasn't perfect. And honestly, that's why the overall grade being thrown around for the Canucks deadline is a B. That's above average. That's competent work. But it's definitely not perfect. And the biggest reason it's not higher is because general manager Patrick Allvin couldn't get a deal done for Teddy Blueger, and also couldn't land 1 more first-round pick. The team already has 2 firsts this summer, but you know they would have loved to walk away with a 3rd. Still, let's go through the moves one by one. The biggest trade of the week was Tyler Myers heading to the Dallas Stars in exchange for a 2nd-round pick in 2027 and a 4th-round pick in 2029. And honestly, this was a move that kind of came together late. A few weeks ago, it didn't even feel like this was realistic, but Myers is still a solid NHL defenseman, and teams are always looking for right-shot blue liners. The Canucks also did Myers a bit of a favor here by sending him to Dallas, which was reportedly his preferred destination, getting 2 draft picks back for a veteran defenseman while also helping the player land somewhere he wanted to go. That's pretty solid work from management. Then we had the Connor Garland trade to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Garland was sent to Columbus for a 2nd-round pick in 2028 and a 4th-round pick in this year's draft. Now this one is where things get a little frustrating. Garland signed an extension last summer, but clearly the direction of the team changed quickly. At some point, he looked at the situation and decided he was open to moving on. And here's the thing that makes this trade a little disappointing. There were reportedly around half a dozen teams interested in Garland at different points. Then Columbus suddenly became desperate after Mason Marchment went down with what looked like a serious injury during a game on Thursday night. From the outside, that situation looked like the perfect moment to push for a 1st-round pick. But it didn't happen. The Canucks ended up settling for a 2nd and a 4th, which is why this trade gets more of a C grade. It's acceptable. But it definitely feels like there might have been more value on the table. Next up was David Kampf going to the Washington Capitals for a 6th-round pick in this year's draft. Now this one actually makes a lot of sense. Earlier in the week, there were already whispers that Kampf was probably the Canuck most likely to get moved among their free agents. He had a really solid Olympic performance, and Vancouver already had enough centers on the roster. Meanwhile, around the league, there are always teams looking for experienced depth down the middle. Kampf started the season with the Toronto Maple Leafs, signed with Vancouver, played well enough to become a trade deadline asset, and in the end, the Canucks turned that into a draft pick. That's basically turning something into value that you didn't necessarily expect to have. So that move gets a B-. Then we had one of the more surprising deals. Lukas Reichel was traded to the Boston Bruins for a 6th-round pick in this year's draft. And if you watched his time in Vancouver, you probably understand why this one was surprising. Reichel was given a chance to play center, but struggled badly in that role. He had opportunities to score but couldn't finish, and eventually he ended up in the AHL. So when Boston stepped up with interest, even if it was just for a 6th-round pick, the Canucks took it. Yes, it's technically a downgrade from the 4th-round pick Vancouver originally spent to acquire him, but considering how things went with Reichel, getting any asset back is actually pretty impressive. That one ends up being graded a B simply because Reichel wasn't even in the NHL anymore. Now here's where we transition into the second piece of news today. Because one of the smaller trades from this deadline actually involved bringing in a new defenseman who could quietly become part of the team's depth moving forward. The Canucks sent minor league defenseman Jet Wu to the San Jose Sharks, and in return acquired right-shot defenseman Jack Thompson. Now at the time of the trade, both players were in the minors, so this didn't change either team's active NHL roster immediately. But the situation around Thompson is actually pretty interesting. He was originally drafted in the 3rd round in 2020 by the Tampa Bay Lightning, and at one point he was seen as a legitimately intriguing prospect. In the AHL with Syracuse, he put up 32 points in 46 games and showed real offensive ability from the blue line. Then he was traded to San Jose at the 2024 trade deadline as part of the deal involving winger Anthony Duclair. Last season, Thompson split time between the Sharks and the San Jose Barracuda in the AHL. When he was in the NHL, he actually looked pretty solid in a bottom pairing role. He played 31 games for San Jose, putting up 4 goals and 6 assists for 10 points, while averaging 15 minutes and 47 seconds per game. He's about 6'1", shoots right, and while he isn't known as a super physical defender or a shutdown player in his own zone, he does bring offensive instincts. In fact, last season he ranked 3rd among Sharks defensemen in 5-on-5 expected goals percentage at 47.1%, which shows he was able to help drive possession when he was on the ice. But this season things got complicated for him. San Jose signed veterans Dmitry Orlov and John Klingberg in free agency, and top prospect Sam Dickinson locked down a roster spot. Suddenly, Thompson was the odd man out. He even cleared waivers at the beginning of the season, which was a bit surprising, and since then he spent the entire year with the Barracuda. His production dropped too, with just 3 goals and 12 points in 42 AHL games, so a change of scenery might actually be exactly what he needs. And for the Canucks, the timing of this move makes sense. After trading Tyler Myers to Dallas, Vancouver suddenly needs more right-shot depth on the blue line. Right now, the depth chart behind Filip Hronek includes younger players like Tom Willander and Victor Mancini, and with Pierre-Olivier Joseph and Derek Forbort currently on injured reserve, the team had even called up 26-year-old Cole Clayton just to serve as a 7th defenseman, despite him having 0 NHL experience. So it wouldn't be surprising at all if Jack Thompson jumps ahead of Clayton on the depth chart and actually gets a chance to compete for NHL minutes down the stretch. And the risk here is basically nothing. Jet Wu was originally a 2nd-round pick back in 2018, but at 25 years old, he still hasn't played an NHL game. He's had some decent AHL seasons, but this year hasn't been one of them. He's got just 1 goal and 8 points in 26 games and a -11 rating. He's also heading toward unrestricted free agency as a Group 6 player, so realistically, Vancouver was probably going to lose him anyway. At that point, turning him into a 23-year-old right-shot defenseman who has already played NHL games is actually a pretty reasonable gamble. And that's really the theme of this rebuild right now. Take chances on players who might still develop. If they work out, great. If they don't, you move on. The final move from the deadline was a waiver claim that brought in Curtis Douglas from the Tampa Bay Lightning organization. Now Douglas is known for one thing more than anything else: toughness. He's actually the tallest player in the NHL right now, and he already has 8 fights this season. Now personally, I'm not someone who thinks fighting fixes everything in hockey, but if you watched the Canucks games against Seattle and Dallas recently, you know this team looked like it had absolutely no pushback at all. So adding a guy who at least brings some physical presence might give fans something to cheer about during the remaining games this season. That waiver pickup gets a B grade. So when you step back and look at everything that happened, 5 trades, 1 waiver claim, multiple veterans moved out, and a bunch of draft picks coming in, the Canucks clearly committed to a full rebuild this week. And honestly, as fans, this is the part that's always tough. Because rebuilding means patience. It means accepting that the next phase of this team is about development, smart drafting, and finding the right pieces that can eventually turn Vancouver back into a contender. But if management uses these draft picks the right way, and if even a couple of these younger players hit their potential, this could be the beginning of something much better down the road. Still, we're Canucks fans. We've heard promises about the future before. Now we're waiting to see if this plan actually works, and that's why I really want to hear from you. What do you think about these moves? Did the Canucks actually have a good trade deadline, or do you think they should have gotten more value for some of these players? Drop your thoughts in the comments because I always love hearing what other fans think. And if you enjoyed talking Canucks hockey with me today, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. The Canucks Nation Report is a brand new channel, and we're trying to reach our first 600 subscribers. So if you want daily conversations about the Vancouver Canucks from a fan who lives and breathes this team just like you do, stick around. Because this rebuild is only getting started.